Voices serves as the megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational change. By highlighting trials and triumphs, our desire is to create a safe space for pivotal conversations, which in turn will deepen the story and provoke hope for you, our listeners. As you may know, change is never easy, but it is inevitable. You are not alone in what you're facing. Your transformation is possible, purposeful, and now. And here's Aaron Wiggum, founder and managing director of New You, with this week's guest.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of New Voices. My name is Aaron Wiggum, and I am your host, also managing director of New You, which New You serves as a platform for individuals to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. But today we're on New Voices, which serves as the megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational and pivotal experiences and are here to tell their story. Today we have one of the generals in Tulsa. We have one of the pseudo mayors of Tulsa. We have one of the people who just makes it happen. He finds a way to make it happen. I met him originally about 4 years ago, and we had a dinner together. It was a convening of minds, and we've been close ever since. And he's pulled me into events. I've pulled him into events. And what I love about this gentleman most of all is that he's a man of high integrity. And if he says he's going to do it, guess what? He does it. And I particularly love those type of people. And so you are in for a treat today as we bring this innovator, as we bring this creator, as we bring this father, as we bring this man of complete, I'll call him a Renaissance man, as we bring him to the table, none other than Charles Harper. Welcome, Charles.
Hey, thank you so much, Aaron, and shout out to New You. And man, I'm so humbled just to be on today, and I appreciate all your kind words, man. I need to take you with me everywhere I go.
Listen,
I'm feeling pretty good.
yeah, I love it, man. I love it. You got too many titles for me to list them all. You know, run World One Development. Also radio personality. But you got too many things for me. I let me just come up with my own stuff.
Right.
But so welcome to the show. How we start every conversation with is tell us the Charles Harper story from wherever you would like to start. We would love to know your story from your perspective.
Man, the short version of the Charles Harper story, man, I'm just a young man that was actually born in Fort Hood, Texas. My dad was in the military, so I was there for a short period of time. Then my mom and he moved to Oakland, California,
Mm,
and I lived there until I was about 3 or 4 years old. But I really came of age when we moved to Arkansas, a
okay.
little small town called Bearden, Arkansas, population less than 1,000,
Wow.
but my mom's side of the family lived in Arkansas. So, hey, when we got there, it was a rough road, man. It was rough. I probably lived in 20 different homes growing up, went to many different schools. But
Mm,
I can't always say the one thing that my mom did good, which helped my stories, man. She always kept me in church, man. So a
mm.
lot of times I just try to tell people if nothing else is going right, find you a church. Because
Yeah,
regardless of my struggles that I dealt with, I always found the way to get the Bible study, to get
hmm
to church, and get to things like that. Versus right after that, I might just be in the club and doing other things.
Right.
So getting into school, that created stuff, not having my dad, in my life. So I remember getting kicked out of kindergarten multiple times.
Oh,
I got kicked out of first grade, second
mm,
grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, failed the eighth grade, and then finally started trying to get this thing. A lot of people don't know that. Finally started, and it was multiple reasons, man. The
yeah.
community where I lived, I mean, it's the same things that we deal with in a lot
Yeah.
of our minority communities. I dealt with
Yeah.
those same things. So
Okay.
I'm very familiar with food stamps. I'm
Yeah.
very familiar with Section 8 housing. I'm very familiar with sleeping on the floor,
hmm
familiar with the refrigerator being empty and you got a jug of water and going to sleep so you can eat while you sleep. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm definitely familiar with coming up on the rough side of the mountain, but I can just say that you know, even though I was dealing with those circumstances, my family still provided love. You know, we might not
Mm.
have had those resources. Some of the resources may be as simple as food, but I can say my mom, my aunts, my uncles, my family, my cousins, we still had a community. We still had a
Okay.
village. It was just a struggling village. You know,
Right.
so I thank God that in my prayers, I was like, Lord, just provide me a way to make it, because where I grew up, to be honest, I didn't see how I could make it. I didn't see nobody going to college. You know,
Mm.
it's the gangsters. You know, it's the 6'3" Impalas. You
Yep.
know, as
Yep.
everybody think they're gonna be the Doughboy. Snoop Dogg is playing in the back. You know,
Yeah.
and you know that kind of stuff. You know, but like I say, despite all of that, and I always say this because when people ask me how was I going to make it, man, I remember getting my Bible when I was younger, and I just prayed and I read the Bible, and I was like, Lord, you know, if you just give me an opportunity to make it, you know,
Mm.
just show me some light, I will be willing to do the work. So I did the opposite. I'm like, Lord, don't just give me everything, give me a roadmap. I'm
Mm.
willing to do the work. Just
Right.
allow me to experience some of the things that I see on TV, allowed me to experience living in a nice home and having a nice family and doing
Hmm.
business and some of these aspirations I would have. So I had a lot of good friends growing up. I would say I was a great athlete. You know, now that
Hmm.
could be debatable based on
Okay.
some of my friends, but sports was my way out. I mean,
Okay.
I was a good football player. I was a good basketball player, and I was a good track runner. And I was able to get a football scholarship.
Mm.
My coach, man, a lot of times in communities, coaches are the most inspirational people you can find. And I must
Yeah.
admit, my coach, Coach Rosenberg, Coach Gathan, and they guided me. You know, I didn't have a father figure, but my coaches would pick me up, and man, they had me working on the roof. I'd be digging sewer holes. I remember
Mm.
for my first vehicle, I worked on the trash truck. So it's hard to be, you know, a superstar athlete, but then I'm up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm on a trash truck. I'm grabbing the
Mm.
trash, but I had the willingness to grind out for the things that I wanted.
Mm.
So I sat there and put a plan together, and I was like, man, I got to work on this trash truck. And it was every Saturday morning, and I'd be up. And man, you want to talk about a job that stinks, literally, is working on the trash truck. But I saved up and I bought me a LTD2 with some bucket seats in it my junior year. And I remember, I remember pulling up to my mama house. I was so excited. I said, "Mama got me a car." Imagine how excited I was because nobody had a car. We didn't have a car. So Mama got us a car. She was like, "You got insurance?" I was like, "What is insurance?" You know, that just lets you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
just the lack of information that I
Yeah.
had. And so I was like, "Okay, I got to get insurance. What is that?" So going through that process, but nevertheless, you know, I think that my mom, along with my coaches and family and friends. I had people around me that would love me. They would hug on me and do that. We just didn't have the resources. But once I went to college, you know, college exposes you to a lot of different things. So I'm the
It
person that
does.
got to college, took advantage of that opportunity,
Hmm.
still kept going to church, kept reading the word, and trying to dodge and stay out of trouble. But I kind of navigated through that. So that's some of the early years, you
Okay.
know, of being Charles Harper.
Okay. Let me circle back on a couple points. So, one, so when you said you got kicked out of first grade, kicked out of second grade, kicked out of third grade, when you say kicked out, what does that actually mean? Like, explain that.
Kicked out mean when I was in kindergarten, I tried to burn down the school. So I am kicked out officially. I'm Look, I done got a paddling from the principal, the teacher, and I'm at home with my mama and she braiding the switches. I don't know if y'all know about the country. Just
Hey,
before
I
the
know
law
about
was
that.
stepped in,
Yeah.
she braiding up the switch. And I got 5 more whoopings to get at home, and I'm probably expelled for, I don't know. I think I'm in kindergarten. One, what is going on, really? But
Right.
I guess 2 weeks. Maybe I'm at home for 2 weeks. So I literally got a paddling and a spanking from my mom. And my mama would let everybody in the village get me.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just one of those things, man. But it was just, you know, I think it was one of those things that father figures are so important, man. I'm
They
just gonna
are.
say that.
Yeah.
And I think I was just acting out. Look, when I think about being hungry, when you get to
Hmm.
school, if you hungry, you don't feel like learning, you don't feel like
No.
listening, you don't
No.
feel like doing nothing but getting some of those basic things. When you look at your clothes, you know, I had one pair of pants, one pair of shoes. I'm
Yeah.
wearing that stuff every day. Kids can be very, very cruel.
What?
It just
Yeah.
is what it is. So,
Well, you know what,
uh,
Charles? It goes from being hungry to being hangry to being angry,
hey,
right?
right,
And
right,
once you get to anger, it all bets are off because you're not even thinking rationally
right.
anymore, right? Your all rationale has escaped you. So I definitely can hear what you're saying. Now, what happened with your father? You said originally y'all moved because he was in the military. What happened with him?
Man, my mom was a soldier, but we lived in Oakland,
Oh, your mom was a
California,
soldier.
and my
Okay,
dad.
okay.
No, she wasn't a soldier. I'm talking about like a soldier in the streets,
Oh, okay,
not
okay,
like
okay.
gangster. But when I say a soldier, you know, yeah.
I
So
get
no,
it.
my dad was a soldier. He was in the military, but we was in California. The reason why I say my mom was a soldier is
Hmm.
because my dad, was dealing with drugs and he was
Oh, okay,
abusing her and doing all
okay.
those different things. So my mom is only 4'11". Well, she was 4'11". God
Hmm.
rest her soul. She's in heaven now. But she was
Hmm.
4'11" and 100 pounds,
Wow.
and it was four of us. And at
Mm,
this time, I'm probably 4 years old. My oldest sister's probably six, and my younger siblings are probably 1 and 2.
mm,
And man, she packed up in the middle of the night with no money, and
mm,
she got to the Greyhound bus station. And imagine she 4'11", 100 pounds. She got four kids with no money, and she told the bus driver, "You must help me get out of this situation." And she has to go from California to Arkansas. So
mm.
that's when I say my mama is a soldier. Imagine the
Woo.
guts and the courage it takes. You got four kids. You're a small woman. My dad he's like me. He got
Mhm.
meat on his bones, but
Right.
she found a way because of the abusive things that he was doing to get
Hmm.
out of that situation. And even though she's going home, imagine leaving home. You got a husband, you're gonna have kids, you're living in California, and all of a sudden it just changes on you, and now you heading back home.
Mm,
And she's the oldest of all of her siblings. So
hmm.
imagine heading home with no money and four kids, and that I can
Hmm.
only imagine the embarrassment. I only can imagine the mental health and the anguish and what she had to deal with doing that.
Yeah.
But I call my mama a soldier because not just myself, my siblings, and everyone. We're all doing really, really good right now. So even though all of the stats say that we should be dead and gone, all the
Yeah.
stats
You beat the
says
odds.
that God God allowed us all to beat the
Hmm.
odds. Even when I see some people now, they'll say,
Yeah.
"Charles, I thought you was dead a long time ago." I'm like, "No, I made it. Thank God I made it." And
Yeah.
so when I go home sometime now, people are so surprised just to see, because most people betted that by 12 I would be dead. Because I was out in the streets, man, fighting, shooting, stabbing, running the streets, doing all of that stuff. Even though I was still
Mm,
playing sports, I was out there.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But, I tell people this all the time. My small group of friends, I remember, even though I was out in the streets, we were athletes. So we would talk about the things that we wanted to be when we grow up. And that's why I
Mhm.
say that words are powerful. So
Yeah.
even though I'm poor, no phone, most time no lights, no gas, and those kind of things, I remember
Hmm.
telling the Lord, now think about this. I'm like, Lord, how we got an outhouse in the 80s? Like
Mm,
property at that level, like outhouse property, not just regular. Like that's extreme because most people be like, "What is an outhouse?" I knew
hmm.
what that was because in my middle school years, I was dealing with that, and I was like,
Yeah.
God, I'm like, how am I using an outhouse? Out of all the cars in the world, we don't have one. This is the kind of conversation I would have with God. Like out of all
Hmm.
the cars in the world, we don't have one. So I remember walking to school, on snowy days, rainy days, me and my siblings and people hitting the potholes, the water getting on us. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, if we kids, why won't somebody stop and pick us up? You see what
Mm,
I'm saying? And give us a ride to school. You see where
right.
we are. So what I always want to do, Aaron, and this is what I always encourage people. I have mentors that are much older than me. I'm like, don't let those things harden your heart.
That's
So
good.
that when God do bless you, then you're not like, I got mine, you get yours. So I think
Right.
God conditioned my heart where I could relate and feel the communities what I was in. So it made me more want to help
Hmm.
versus become that same cycle where I see kids and young people and be like, that's somebody else's problem. I'm like, let me
Okay.
step in because I know personally what that feels like. So I'm not just going to leave y'all hanging like that. I'm going to do what I can.
I got it. So when you think about, the work that you're doing today, it's very closely linked to your experience growing up as a youth, right? And you're
Right.
now the solution. You went from being in the problem to being the solution.
Right.
Wow.
It it is that when I after I graduated from college, my wife was going to OU to be a cardiovascular sonographer, which is a heart specialist. I was going for
Mm-hmm.
criminal justice, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember moving to Tulsa. I moved to Tulsa right after I graduated from college in 2000. I
Mm-hmm.
moved here, and my wife moved here. We got married, and I moved to South Tulsa. And I'm rolling. Life is good. I'll say that we two college graduates. You got a house, you're getting cars, got good credit, and it's hard to get. Got to watch college and good credit. Sometimes they don't go
Yes,
together, but we got
that's
good
right.
credit and those things. But I remember I was like, man, where the black people at? Just being transparent. Well, where the black people? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
living in South Tulsa for like a year. I'm like, what? And I got invited to Morning Star Baptist Church one day, and
Uh-huh.
man, I turned off Pine and Peoria. I was like, we
Here
here
they go.
now.
Yeah, yeah.
So here they go. And I remember going to Morning Star, and Morning Star was probably the best church for me to land at because Dr. T. Austin Chappelle Jr., God rest his soul, he's in heaven now. But I remember going to that church, and people like, I don't know if you know Danny Williams, who was a
Mm-hmm.
prominent attorney, and
Okay.
Wendy, they went to that church. His brother was a dentist. These black
Okay.
people went to the church. His uncle was Judge Chappelle,
Mm-hmm.
went to the church. And all of these people that looked like me that I just had never been around people like that, doctors, lawyers, dentists. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting in here like, man, what is this? And I just remember being really encouraged by that. But what got me the most is when I turned that corner on Pine and Peoria, I seen the kids riding on the bikes. I seen the struggle. And I was always saying, Lord, I just want to make sure, even though you've blessed me and I asked you to, I'm
Mm-hmm.
walking in that now. I didn't forget. I asked you to show me a way, and I committed to doing something to help if you help me. So you've
Mm-hmm.
helped me. So what do I need to do? And I would ride, and the Lord would spiritually let me feel the pain of North Tulsa. I might be
Mm.
riding in the infinity, but He
Mm-hmm.
would let me feel the community. I don't know if that makes sense. And
Yep.
I was
The
just
weight of it.
asking, what could I do? The
Yeah.
weight of it, and a lot of
Yeah.
people, and long story short, I run into Bishop Melvin Cooper and Joyce Cooper for World
Mm-hmm.
One for Christ, Family Life Ministry, and he had a similar story. And I was just like, man, I end up going to his church. He's like, the Lord told me, I'm just sitting in this church. I didn't tell him my story. I just sitting and going to church, and he said, the Lord told me to put you over World One Development, and I
Mm.
have no experience in not for profit. My job interview was love God and love God people. Literally, it was no job description. It was no
Wow.
salary. It was love God and love God people. Charges a lot of sweat equity, but I'm wondering if you'll help me. I'm like, I
Wow.
already told the Lord when I was 18 that I would
Mm-hmm.
help. So I came in executive director of World One Development at that time, and a lot of what we do with EduRec and the
Yeah.
prison reentry program and the
Yeah.
36th Street North Event Center and the
Mm-hmm.
all of this stuff, it got birthed out of that. And what I'll say about the Lord, just as much as I've put into it, He's given me back, man, and
Mm.
all of the lives that has been changed, touched,
Mm-hmm.
not just kids, adults, families. I'm watching, 6, 7 kids now graduate from college with honors, have
Mm-hmm.
opportunities. I get to touch that kid that once looked like me. I see
Mm-hmm.
those little Charles Harpers running around. I
Yep.
see the little girls that look like my sisters. I can
Mm.
identify maybe if it's sexual abuse going on or
Yep. Yep.
physical abuse going on,
Yeah.
or I can. So I just you can't do everything, but
Yeah.
I just feel like God has blessed me to impact and to do my part because we now do stuff in Tulsa, but we partner with many different states like Omaha and Memphis and Louisville in California.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just came back from Uganda, which was with
Yeah.
1,200 kids,
I saw that.
feeding them,
Yeah.
getting them in school, helping them with infrastructure. We built a home. We helped build a church. We put
Mm-hmm.
some water system in so they can have toilets. So
Mm-hmm.
to go from where I was to where I am now, impacting the lives of kids and adults, local, national, and international, it's just a testament to what God can do,
Mm.
with anybody. He can use any of us. So I know a lot of people see me now, and their assumption is I grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth and
Mm-hmm.
had mom, had dad. But my dad died in a hotel with a needle in his arm from a drug overdose at 50,
Mm.
and now I'm 50.
Mm,
So my story, and I don't even know my dad's whole story because he didn't grow up in my life, but I just
mhm,
know that maybe sometime I want to encourage somebody that if your dad is not there or certain people are not there, don't think God is not looking out for you, because it was probably a blessing for me not to have my dad in my life. If he died in a hotel room, they found him after 2 weeks with a needle in his arm.
mm,
Right. And I'm 50 years old now, but I've never drank. I've never smoked. Nothing against people that need to sip on a little something. Or smoke.
mhm.
I'm not saying against, I'm just saying, as far as for me, I felt like I had enough hurdles. I had enough to overcome. So why
Right,
add drinking or smoking to,
right.
you know what I mean, to what
Yep.
I already got going on. So even to this day, I still have never drank the beer. I've never smoked a cigarette or anything.
Yeah.
And that don't even go along with the way that I came up, because when you come up the way I did, you need a drink. You need a smoke. It's understandable. 'Cause-
Yeah.
because so that's why it's, and I have no judgment. Another big thing, I have no enemies, man. I love everybody. I tell God I can be a tool that you can use for anybody. I have no enemies in the world. When I go, can you imagine that? I have nobody that I
Mhm.
dislike. I have none of that. So I just try to live in love, try to take care of business, try to engage with people, and just help where I can, because
Yeah.
our life is our testimony. So I think
That's
I
it.
felt like I just gave a testimony, but
You did. You did. So I got a few things I want to touch on, man. This is so good. I,
yeah.
talk about, as a black man, what is your experience navigating uh, the what you learned in the streets, okay, and then filtering that into the boardrooms that you sit on now, like the savvy that's necessary, or that becomes very second nature. Like, can you talk about what that looks like, the conversion from the streets credibility to the boardroom credibility, and how do you navigate those spaces as a black man, understanding now both sides of the coin?
Man, I would say, hope this is a good parallel, man. Growing up with gangsters, man,
Hmm.
growing up with Bloods and Crips and all of that,
Hmm.
and now you're trying to negotiate life. How do
Right.
you not have to be a part of those things, if that makes sense?
Yep.
So you got to know how to talk. So when
Yeah.
they say no, you are going to be a part of this gang, and you got to say, well, no, man, I'm in school, I'm doing this, and still be cool. It's hard to
Yes.
still be cool and not get
Yeah.
into certain things. So that's your conversational stuff. And I remember this guy. I man, it's funny how know people growing up. We used to call him Pop Squad, and I know his name is Brian something. You
Hmm.
you had nicknames and you stick with them, but I
Yep.
remember
Yep.
he told me in the ninth grade, he told me, he was older, like 10 years older than me. He said, Charles, conversation rules the nation. He said,
Mm.
boy, and you got some conversation on you. You got a
Hmm.
mouthpiece on you. And he said, man, and I guarantee you, you're going to go farther than all of us, because you know how to talk. You make people laugh. When you
Hmm.
walk into a room, everybody feels better. So,
Yeah.
man, even though I know you're struggling with a lot of stuff, just know that God gave, because Pop would be selling, oh man, he'll be selling dope. That's why I'm using the name Pop. He could be
Yeah.
selling dope, but then he might be preaching on Sunday.
Yeah.
So in the hood, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You might, the pastor might be at church Sunday, but he at the club with you that night. So
Right.
it can really be tough to navigate what you need to do. But I would say navigating from the streets of dealing with people selling drugs and the gang life and all of that, and being able to still stay focused, stay in school, because a lot of my friends died. They either
Mm.
died or they did not graduate. Most.
Mm.
I've been trying to figure out what friends did I have that graduated. Most of them either died or they didn't graduate. So
Wow.
navigating, still being able to be cool with
Yeah.
them, doing that part of life, but then at the same time, I had to find a way to adjust to be in school and
Hmm.
finding a way to get through these books and to get
Yeah.
to college.
Yeah.
And so being impressionable to coaches, dealing
Hmm.
with the media. So it was constantly tough, because by day I'm in school, but I'm that kid that's about to go stay up all night long, literally.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? And then turn around and be back in school the next day. And
Wow.
so, and then navigating that, dealing with relationships,
Hmm.
dealing with relationships as well, because even though I was growing up in those situations, I still had a lot of love and respect for elders. I still
Mm.
had love and respect for women, and that came
Mhm.
from like my great grandparents and my
Mhm.
aunties. That, so I don't know how I got out of school without having kids, but so
Mhm.
that's a whole nother navigation. But I would say bringing people together. It's a lot of
Mhm.
people probably could be dead if maybe I wasn't in the club to say, "Come on, y'all, come on,
Mhm.
man, not this, not yet, man. You've been drinking, you've been drinking." You got
Mhm.
these guns, you got these knives. Man, let me take y'all home. Let's do this. So
Yeah.
that's negotiating,
Negotiation.
not
Yeah.
fighting.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yeah.
I also have been a designated driver since I
Okay.
was 12. So I don't know how many people are still alive because I would drive a carload of people to the club. And I literally, women, beautiful women, I just want to start naming people, but the car would be jam packed. And I can remember driving them home at 13 years old at daybreak. And I literally would be dropping each person off at home, knocking on the door, saying, "Hey, mama, hey, she back home safe, but she 15. She's safe. She's safe." I'm literally taking everybody home, and then I take the car, clean it up. I'll just say my cousin's name was Jeff Combs because he might look at this, but he was a little older cousin, but he had
Mhm.
this 6'3" Impala. He'll let me be the designated driver. But I'm just thinking because so many other people have in my little small town, a lot of people have died from car accidents,
Yeah.
way more than it needs to be. And sometimes I'd be like, Lord, I know you allowed me to save a lot of lives because I came through in the 90s. I graduated in 1992. So in the
Mhm.
90s, it was tough.
It was
But
going.
I just
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
God that, man, it was going during that
Yeah.
time. All the drinking and smoking and gangs and drugs was hitting the streets. Dr.
Mhm.
Dre, Snoop Dogg, that's my era.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I sit back now, I know that a lot of people are still alive, because, God allowed me to not do certain things and to negotiate situations,
Mhm.
in house parties, in
Yeah.
clubs, in different spaces. And I would say I also took that to college. When I went to college, it was a lot of that same stuff. It's still the
Where'd you go to
90s and
school?
all of that. I went to University of Arkansas at Monticello,
Okay.
which is a small school. It's where I went
Mhm.
to where I played football for two
Got it.
years. But man, I tell people a lot of times, certain colleges are more gangster than school. I
Yeah.
thought when I got to college, everything was easy. Oh
Mm-mm.
my God. For people that went to college as freshmen, they know what I'm talking about. Man,
Mhm.
it's more rough in college than it is in high school. But being in college and having coaches and having teammates, and I can say one of the pivotal moments for me was pledge in Phi Beta Sigma. I know it's a
Mhm.
lot of other fraternities out there and
Mhm.
they all great, but man, Phi Beta Sigma is part of what saved me.
Mm.
My DPs and my line brothers and just that whole fraternity, and those were my sorority sisters, and just that whole D9
Mhm.
because it was a big piece because typically when you get into a fraternity or a sorority, you're trying to, it kind of separates you in a way and expectations put on you now. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
And so that was a pivotal role for me because it gave me, I love my little brother and my sisters, but that gave me another band of brothers
Mm.
that you had that around you when you was out and about trying to make it. Because I could call my brothers now, and I can tell you right now, probably 200 of them will pull up in Tulsa. So, and I'll do the
Mhm.
same for them. But
Yeah.
about doing all of the right things. So I
Yeah.
will say, me pledging has been really, really good in my life because of the rules and things that you're supposed to live by now. You can't always be
Yeah.
perfect, but at least you got a guideline of scholarship services and humanity, that you have to
Yeah.
think about, which kind of goes into what I go do in the community. So having that commitment to God and then having that commitment in my fraternity, what I'm supposed to be doing,
Mhm.
it kind of goes hand in hand.
What impact did fatherhood have on your life, and what is the reverberating uh, impact that it is still having?
Man, I would say not having my dad and those emotions and feelings definitely spilled over into me being a father.
Yeah.
My son, Khalil Harper, when I was finishing up, because even though I went to University of Arkansas, I
Mhm.
transferred to Langston University,
Yeah.
and which is in Oklahoma, and
Mhm.
HBCU, which HBCU, that's a whole nother thing. You already know
Yes.
HBCU,
Yeah.
that was life changing for me. But while I was going to college, my son was young. And so he had to still live with his mom and his grandmother. but I would send $250 home every 2 weeks. Because I'm like, I got to take care of my kid. Every break I had, I was picking them up. And I was always telling them, before you start school, I'm going to make sure I graduate. So I was doubling up on my classes so that I can have you. And so my whole thing has always been about being a great dad. That's like an everyday thing when I wake up, is being a good father, because I never want a child, my kid, to feel the way that I felt not having my dad there. So, and now here's the impact. Man, when I picked up my son, nothing against nobody, because this was my son. When you're a father, it's your job to make sure.
Yeah.
But those 4 years that he was not with me while I was in college, when I picked him up and I moved him to Oklahoma, my wife and I got married. Man, I took him to school and he had to do his assessment test. And Khalil, he's okay now because the story ended well. But man, he didn't even know how to spell his real name, because his nickname was Man. So when we sat with the teacher to do assessment, now I'm a college graduate with honors. My wife is a college graduate with honors, but I wasn't with him those 4 years. And so he couldn't spell his name. He couldn't count to 10. He didn't know his ABCs.
Yeah.
He didn't know any of those things. I was like, my Lord, thank you that I got him. So Miss Bibbs was his teacher. Miss Bibbs was like, she kind of looking at us like, I'm looking at y'all and I'm looking at him. I'm looking at y'all and I'm looking at him. I'm like, hey, it's a story to it. It's a story to it. This was not the plan. So, and nothing, that's why I say it's no judgment on nobody that was in his life. It's my job as a dad.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that's a gap I missed. Long story short, she told then my wife and I that there's no way he could pass kindergarten. Like, it was an impossible task. And I understood, because he didn't know his ABCs. He couldn't count to 10. He didn't know how to spell his name. I got it. I was like, man, okay, but I'm going to get to work. You know, I said, well, because being a father was very important. So my wife and I work with my son. How about this? And this is why it's so critically important to have dads. This is August. By December, now, August to December of the same year, he was in Gifted and Talented in that period of time.
Wow.
From August 2000 to by December, he was getting letters saying Gifted and Talented. It was on the honor roll because of the efforts of my wife and I. It's a lot of work in there. It's some tears. It's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
Prayers, tears. Hey, look, we was going to Morning Star Church, so that the church village was good. That was good. And long story short, my son went on to go to West Point to play football.
Oh, nice.
There's a lot in that story, but my son ended up going to West Point. And if you know how difficult it is to get in West Point,
very difficult.
It's just a whole different thing altogether. And he's an excellent young man now. He's an engineer now. If you see him, we like twins. He's just taller than I am. But you a lot. And here's the ticket, dads. Me just being in his life was enough. Wow. I didn't have to do a whole lot. Me just being his dad.
Presence.
Because I remember, just look, I'm brushing my teeth. He brushing his teeth. Yep. I'm doing this with my hair. And one day when he was playing football, probably in the 3rd grade, and I never noticed this. When I get to the game, you know me, Aaron, I'm shaking everybody's hand. When I come in the room, I'm engaging. And these young men stopped me and said, hey, Charles, hey, hold on. I said, hey, what's going on? They said, I don't know if you realize it, but we are so impressed because every time you get somewhere, your son is following right behind you, and he emulates everything that you do. Wow. If you shake somebody's hand, he shake their hand. If you hug them, he hug them. If you don't do anything, he don't do anything. And it just hit me right then. I'm glad they told me that day that, and here's another thing that I'm telling young dads this, because I was a young dad. I'm 24. I'm 24, 25. So I'm a young dad. And I remember me and him playing. Remember, I'm a young dad. And for a season, I'll be honest, 22, 23, I would go home. I would still go to the club. But everywhere I went, I took my son with me. Everywhere I went, he went. He would just be sitting on my shoulders. If you look at pictures back in the day, he always on my shoulders wherever I went. If I'm out at 2, 3 in the morning at the club, he out with me. But I remember being in the club on the dance floor, and the whole club full of smoke, and his eyes all red. And I remember asking myself, man, Charles, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
You in college, you're doing good. Why are you at home at the club? Got your son out. What are you doing? What is going in through his eye gate? What's going into his ear gate? And at that moment, I said, you know what? I'm done with the clubs. And from then until now, like 22, 23, I haven't been to a club since. And I'm 50. I was like, man, what am I doing? And so those things add up. Um, so being a father, being in your kid's life, it's gonna make the greatest impact, son and daughters, because my daughters are doing great too. My oldest daughter,
Yeah.
Gloria, she's at Mid First Bank and doing really, really well. Long story short on her, I didn't even know I had her, my oldest daughter, until she was 9. So I
Mm-hmm.
got to college playing football in August. She was on her way by September, but her mom left school. When I had my youngest daughter, Matiana, I got a phone call from some mutual friends that said, when you gonna come get your daughter? I'm like, my daughter upstairs. They said, no, when you gonna come get your Gloria? I'm like, look, I hadn't heard nothing about this since. And I'm like, man, I'm married. I'm in this house. I'm like, girl, you can't call me and say that. What are you talking about? I just had a daughter in March. This is May. But
Right.
I knew what she was talking about. So me and my son, I'm taking him home to visit his mom for the summer. We stop at Popeyes, Aaron, and man, my friends that I went to school with, and they open that Popeyes door, and she come running toward me. She didn't have to say nothing because I know what my family looked like. And as soon as I
Right.
seen her, I was like, wow, I got a 9-year-old daughter. You see what I'm
Wow.
saying?
Yeah.
So I got a 9-year-old daughter. So now what you gonna do but of course I engage in her life. We've been like this ever since. She's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
She got 3 beautiful grandkids, been married for 13 years, doing well in Oklahoma City. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, man, life can get hard, man. Just have a vision, write it down, put some scripture to it, put the right people around you, have the
Mm-hmm.
faith, hang in there, and God can put all your broken pieces back together in life, put it back together for your kids, put it back together for your family, and thus the community and mankind and humanity benefits from you surviving because people are tied to you making it helps so
Yeah.
many others to make it.
Yes. That's it. That's it. And that's the perfect setup for my last question. Uh,
Okay.
I ask every guest this. Walk us through a time where you had to hold on to hope. And it could be younger, it could be 20s, 30, whatever. A time you had to hold on to hope. What was the ingredients of that moment, and how did you hold on to hope?
Man, I can say one time that I can definitely remember where I had to hold on to hope was my going into my junior year in college when I was playing football, and so my grades wasn't looking too good.
Mhm.
Um, I was in everything, and I was like, man, I am not going to graduate. I'm probably about to flunk out of college, and I'm sitting at home in my bedroom, and I got some of my partners with me, and I was
Mhm.
like, man, Lord, man, I was going for it, but maybe college is not for everybody, and
Mhm.
and that's when I kind of wrote out, and I actually like one of my partners. I don't know about y'all, but I got one partner that most of the time he don't know what he's talking about, but every now and then he says something that's
Yeah.
monumental. So this was
Okay.
this friend, and he was like, and this is a critical piece of my life. He said, Charles, I think we should look at going to Job Corps. And I
Mm.
hadn't even never heard of Job Corps. And remind you, I'm a Sigma. I'm playing
Mhm.
football. I'm in college. And he says, Job, I'm like, what is that? Now he embellishes everything. So he said, man,
Mhm.
Job Corps is it, man. Man, they
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
swimming pools. They got this and this. And this. He embellishing it, but I'm listening. He said, you don't have to pay no money to go. You can stay there. You can do, and I'm just listening. And the long story short, I kept thinking about it. I said, you know what? At this time, I'm doing too much. I'm back. I'm in college, but I'm clubbing and partying and like I said, in college, you fighting, you shooting,
Mhm.
you doing something. I'm like, I'm doing the same stuff, and it's stressful. I could almost say I've never said it. I was probably depressed at that time because
Mm.
I felt like I'm not going back to college. I'm not going to do this, and I
Mhm.
don't really know what I'm going to do. And long story short, Miss White, who was the Job Corps coordinator, I
Mhm.
called her. I just called and said, "Hey, Miss White, my partner's told me something about called Job Corps. I don't even know what it is." She was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Job Corps is a place where you can get a trade, you can get a skill, you can do this, you get medical, dental. She was selling it, boy. She was just hitting me. And I was
Mhm.
thinking, I called my coach Rosell in college, and because I couldn't see how I was going to make it out of college, because everybody thought they was going to go to the NFL. And at this
Yeah.
point, boys, some boys out there knock your helmet off. I might not make it to the league either. So I need to get a skill. So when I
Yeah.
talked to, because I've always been a barber. I used to cut everybody hair when I was
Okay.
younger. That was my hustle in school. So I cut everybody hair. So I said, well, let me go get my license. So my whole goal was just to go to Job Corps for 6 months, get
Mhm.
my barber license. go back to college, finish up, and then I was just going to become a barber. I'm going to become a barber, open up my shop. But I came to a place called Guthrie, Oklahoma. You might not be unheard of that, even though you're in Oklahoma. It's a small, and it was called Guthrie Job Corps Center. And I went there in 1994. I was 20 years old, and I got there and they did all my medical stuff. And it's like being in Oklahoma. I said, I want to create a new image of myself. I'm not going to be cussing. I ain't clubbing. Look, it was so bad. I'm like, I don't even want to talk to no girls for a little bit. I don't want to chase no women. I don't want to do nothing but just get myself together. So I went to Job Corps, and after 6 months, I went from 170 to about 195. I'm lifting weights. I got my medical, got the stress and the pressures of life just came off me. I didn't need nothing from my mom. I had food. I can work out. I was getting a trade. I got a business office technology, a computer trade. And I was getting ready to think about going back home. And they said, Charles, we'll pay for you to go to college. And I was like, and I was almost like trauma, because I was thinking, me and college don't go together. Right. I came here from college. This is what I'm thinking. But they said, no, it's Langston University, HBCU. So Mr. Cornelius, that's his name. Mr. Cornelius said, man, you have great leadership. You just got distinguished graduate from Job Corps. So just give it one semester. So I told Mr. Cornelius, I said, man, I'll give it one semester. And it was this program through Job called Advanced Career Training. So I had got some trades, and then I tried my first semester, and I wasn't playing football no more. I wasn't stepping at all the step shows. I wasn't doing all of that. And how about Aaron? Man, I was a 4.0 student that first semester.
Wow.
And I was like, 4 point. I don't know the 4 point. I didn't even know 4 points existed, to be honest. I'm like, I made straight. And so when I did that, I said, let me give it another year. And then I made a 4.4. So after a year, my GPA was like a 3.99. And my son was young. And this is that part of me telling my son, man, I think I can graduate. Because at this point, my motivation is I got to do something for my son. You know, I want to go to college. I want to graduate. I want to pick him up, provide a better life. So long story short, I went to Langston through Job Corps for 2 years. Then after the 2 years, I got out and got my own spot, finished up, got my son. And that's what connected me to Tulsa. So that time between me not knowing after those 2 years of college if I was going to make it or not knowing how I was going to go, Guthrie Job Corps Center is an extreme super piece of my success because it took me out of the environment, medical, dental, eye, trade, and I never went back to Arkansas. I came here at 21. I got pictures when I left. Me and my mama was talking, and I remember people, when you don't know, you don't know. They're like, you going to Oklahoma, them Indians gonna kill you, boy. They thought in Arkansas, in Oklahoma, remember the Indians and all that?
Right.
And I was like, man, nothing is like that, man. You got to take a chance. If you're going to make it in life sometime, you got to take a chance.
Yeah.
You got to jump out there. But from the time I did that, I graduated, moved to Tulsa. That connects the story. But Guthrie Job Corps, I went there for actually 3 years, even though one was in trade. The other 2 years I was going to college, as they would drop me off at Langston every day. And I would just do my work and mind my business, man. I would just do my work and mind my business. And they were sending money home to my son. I could put him on my medical stuff. My junior and senior year, I left Job Corps. They let me work at Job Corps. I was top flight security of the world, Craig. So I was working security my last 2 years when I was in Job Corps. So I was working a night shift 11 to 7, and I was a full-time student, right?
Okay.
So that was tough times, but it was rewarding because it's tough to go to school full-time and work full-time. But I had to take care of my son. I had to have medical, dental, and that stuff. Yep. But that was my sacrifice, because what's your sacrifice to making it? My big sacrifice was having to go to school full-time, work full-time to take care of my kid. I had an apartment and a car. And then once I came out of that, that set me. But it was that. So Job Corps, man, it bailed me out. It gave me a lifeline when I couldn't see no life at that time.
Wow, man! And thank you so much for sharing that story. Real quick, what's a call to action for our listeners? What would you encourage them? And then how can they reach you or follow you or hear more about your story?
Well, I'll say if it's personally, man, my Facebook is Charles Lamont. My Instagram is Charles Lamont. I put a little humor in there because sometimes in life you got to laugh or cry. Sometimes I choose to laugh. Sometimes I choose to cry. But in my business world, you can go to World One Development. That one is WON. So World world1development.com. And I'm the CEO of that and been doing that for 12 years now. So all of my community stuff, my local, national, and international stuff is there. You can also follow World One Development. We have a radio show. I have it today, actually.
Okay.
Every Wednesday at 1:00 Central Standard Time. It's called World One Development News you can use. And trust me, you'll be in for a treat in terms of being in the know, local, national, and internationally. And hey, that's it. You can catch me. You can catch me there. And hey, I'll try to encourage, I would try to inspire. And if we can partner or coordinate, if you're doing something and we have some synergy there, hey, we can get together. Like me and my friend Aaron, man, we got together 4 years ago. And I just think about the thousands of people that are impacted from our relationship. So
Absolutely.
you can definitely catch me there at those platforms.
Okay. And what about a call to action for our listeners?
Man, call to action right now, get out and vote.
There you go.
That's
a good
what's on
one.
my mind right now.
Yeah.
Your call to action right now. We're doing a lot of good things. I would say in our community, there's a lot of good things going on. But my call to action right now, I can't think of nothing more important right now in this moment. And if you're 18 years old or more, I'm not trying to tell you who to vote for, but you really need to vote not for just the presidential election, but your city councilors, your senators, and all of that, because that will greatly impact our lives much more if you get involved in that process. So get out and vote is my call to action.
Thank you so much. Charles, this has been so wonderful, man. I really appreciate this. Much more work for us to do together. But kudos to you, man, for this story of overcoming. This is a story of truly overcoming, defying all odds, defying familial barriers, defying poverty barriers, and going for the win regardless of the situation. And so, man, I'm inspired all over again and encouraged by what you shared with us today. I really appreciate it. You've all heard it here today. Please like, share, and follow. You can follow us on Instagram at New You Tulsa. At New You Unlimited, New You Unlimited. All right. And you also can follow us on IG, same thing, and LinkedIn. All right. And so we look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode of New Voices. Visit our website at www.newuunlimited.com. That is NEWU Unlimited.com. Follow us on social media at New You Unlimited on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And a special thank you to our producer, Jesse Ulrich. If you're looking for self-improvement, join our programs for personal and professional development. New You is a way for diverse talent to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. Bring your future into focus.